use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast.
Yay!
Yay! I'm Charles Skaggs, and with me, as always, is my partner in time, Jesse Jackson.
I'm not your partner in crime today.
You can be my partner in crime and my partner in time.
Hey, Charles, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. Boy, you are batting 1,000.
I hope so.
On the picks you've been giving us to look during this long off season have just been amazing. We went through the three, kind of episodes, the audio dramas, and now you have us a fun one to talk about today.
Yes. We're going to be talking about the Curse of Fenric, which is arguably Sylvester McCoy's finest episode. Now, granted, he only had 12 to choose from, because Doctor Who in the 80s was pretty lean.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of production values, but in terms of episode numbers. I'm glad you like this one, and I'm really excited to talk about it. We've had a few weeks off. We've been talking about Big Finish audios, so I kind of thought that maybe all of you wonderful people out there might want to break from that. So let's get back on the TV. We're going to do some classic Who. We haven't talked much about the Sylvester McCoy era. I think we covered Remembrance of the Daleks, and that's pretty much it. So I thought it's way overdue to talk about some more Sylvester McCoy. So let's talk about the Curse of Fenric. Jesse, what's kind of before we get into kind of a general overview, your quick thoughts on the episode or the story?
Yeah, and I have some questions for you as well. More in general terms, I really liked this episode. One of the things when we watched the previous episode, and I believe Ace was the companion on that one as well, right?
Yes.
I was a little distracted by her calling him Professor.
Right.
But on this time, I kind of embraced it. I like the charm of that.
Yeah, it's a term of endearment.
Yes, and I liked it a lot. So,
and it kind of sets Ace off apart from other companions.
It does, and
gives her her own thing.
And I liked her a whole lot. In fact, this whole episode is a really good one, and I think there should be some rules, and I don't know, this might be a good episode for us to do in the future, is things you should know before you get into Classic Who. And how to get your mind in the right way.
Right.
I just think there's a few things you need to do, and not the obvious things like you got to put aside special effects and things like that. I think there's some other things, but I like this one a lot, Charles, and I'm really looking forward to talk about it. But in general terms, you mentioned that Doctor Who was lean in the 80s. What is the thoughts on Sylvester McCoy's Doctor? I mean, obviously he is a actor who has gone on to do significant other things.
Right.
So what was the feeling back then about his role as the Doctor, him playing the Doctor, his version of the Doctor, I guess, and also how do you think you classic fans has he changed his mind? Have people changed their opinion?
Right. Just in general, I think Sylvester McCoy kind of came in to the show at a very tumultuous time. Obviously, Colin Baker had just been sacked by Michael Grade at the BBC. He was apparently invited back, supposedly, as the story goes, for the first four-part serial. But then turned that down. So there was no regeneration, nothing of that nature, which is why you see Sylvester in the Colin Baker wig with the blurred blurred out face in Time of the Ronnie, but once he kind of got into a role, he had a rough first season in season 24. They weren't quite sure where to go with his doctor. The season 25 proved to be a little bit better. McCoy started to kind of find his doctor. His pairing with Sophie Aldred as Ace helped a lot because the two of them had great on-screen chemistry. And then by season 26, his final season, he was able to adopt the brown coat as opposed to the cream-colored jacket, and it made his doctor a lot darker, much more manipulative, he definitely is in this story.
Yeah.
Curse of Fenric, which we'll get into. But it brought a little bit of an edge to his doctor. But unfortunately, by this time, the ratings had just gone so far down. The BBC wasn't kicking in any money to the show. They're basically working almost like a high school production budget, practically. And as a result, it died.
Okay.
And I don't think that was Sylvester's fault. I think it was just it took kind of such a hit with the Colin Baker era because that was so mishandled that I don't think the show really recovered. And Sylvester, I think Sylvester's doctor is more well regarded than Colin Baker's doctor.
And we've talked about this in the past. One of the things that I think Colin Baker has helped himself, there's times about, I'm better ex-president than you are president. I think a lot of people think Jimmy Carter was someone. I think Colin has, despite him not coming back for the regeneration, over the years with the Big Finish audio, his convention work, and his work like on specials and other stuff where he's actually done narration for the 50th anniversary, right?
Right.
I think he has restored his reputation, and people are a lot more fond of him.
Oh, I totally agree.
And I think they know more what he's...
Finish has been huge for Colin Baker's doctor.
Yeah, and I think also they've been able to say they understand a little bit more what he was trying to do, and so he wasn't served.
Now, one other thing I want to bring up
Yeah.
real quick about the Sylvester McCoy era. When Sylvester started in 1987, you got to keep in mind that was also the same year that Star Trek The Next Generation debuted.
Wow.
And as a result, I mean, if you compare Star Trek The Next Generation, the first season, to Doctor Who's final 3 seasons, it pretty much blows Doctor Who out of the water.
See,
and
wow, Charles, I did not realize that. That is fascinating.
So I think fans, they saw what TV could be. The BBC wasn't giving it to them, so they just kind of tuned out.
If you had just shown me this and I had not known, I would have said this is a 70s show.
Right.
Right. It looked and felt like that.
Yeah, this episode actually came out in 1989.
Wow. Yeah, you think about that's, and if you put them right next to each other, right?
Right.
Next Generation.
This episode would have been around Star Trek Next Generation's 3rd season, which is when the show Star Trek Next Generation really found its groove.
Yeah.
And so it pretty much blew Doctor Who out of the water.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
okay, wow, that's great point, Charles.
So just kind of keep it, kind of keep in perspective with the time period.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
All right, thank you for that background. I love the fact that I had not prompted Charles beforehand I was going to ask this question.
Yep.
He had no time to prep, but I had total confidence that he's like, oh, this is an easy one to wing. Ask me a tough one next time, Jesse. Okay.
You can do better, Jackson.
No,
all right. So give a general overview. This is written by Ian Briggs, who also wrote the first Ace story, Dragonfire, from season 24, which introduced her. Which makes perfect sense because Dragonfire, when Ace was introduced, they revealed that there was this time storm that somehow transported her from Earth to this planet called Ice World. And that is actually brought full circle in this story, with an explanation of what caused that time storm. So it's kind of like this is bringing the Ace's story arc pretty much full circle now to a reasonable conclusion. It's directed by Nicholas Mallet, and this is the third serial from season 26 in 1989. This was originally supposed to be the first story of the season, but got reshuffled to the third out of the four. And so, as a result, I think it works better this way. I think this would have been a great story, but I don't think it would have been a great story to lead off the season with. And so, we've got a couple of notable guest stars in this episode. I'm not sure if you kind of researched them a little bit, but
I did not. Please share.
Yeah, Anne Reed, who plays Nurse Crane, who is the nurse who helps the Judson, the guy, the paraplegic in the wheelchair. She actually played Florence Finnegan in 2007 Smith and Jones. You know, the alien that like kills people with a straw. Her.
Yes.
So yeah, she returned all those years later.
Oh, neat.
In Smith and Jones. Meanwhile, Janet Henfrey, who plays Mrs. Hardacre, who's that really nasty woman that kind of berates these two schoolgirls in this episode.
Right.
The really homely-looking woman.
Yes.
Apologies, but she's a homely-looking woman.
Okay.
So she ends up playing Mrs. Pitt, one of the people on the train car in Mummy on the Orient Express in 2014.
Oh, nice.
So there's a couple of legacy Doctor Who actors from this story.
Very cool.
So just little. That's one of those little Doctor Who tidbits that you might find interesting. Hopefully you found it interesting.
I did.
But in this story here, it's kind of like the second part of also a 3-part episode mini arc, like really an unintentional mini arc because the episode, like I said, got reshuffled in the order. But the previous story, Ghostlight, features Ace, like her and we'll kind of get into this a little bit, but it features an element of Ace's past, and then this story kind of features her background with her, a little bit touching on the background with her mother, and we find out her grandmother in this story. And then in Survival, the show's final story from the classic run, we go back to Ace's hometown of Perryvale. And so it's like just kind of like a little mini arc of like Ace's background. So we'll kind of get into this a little bit more, but
hey, and that's a little unusual, at least on the classic Who that I've seen, where they're kind of doing a continuing thread. Yeah,
companions normally, I mean, up to this point, they really didn't get that much to do.
Right.
So this is where this era, or of course it's right before the show ends. But This is when the companion starts getting developed as an actual character.
Very nice.
With considerable depth. I mean, there are companions with depth to them, but it was very rare. And in this one, with Ace, you kind of actually get her background.
Yes.
And kind of, and she's kind of a mystery that gets kind of like revealed over the various stories, especially the 3 that I just mentioned.
Okay, very good.
All right, so let's get into this a little bit. First thing I want to talk about is the 7th Doctor. And as I mentioned before, he's very manipulative, this Doctor. He starts off his run, like he's kind of like this eccentric, very physical performer, doing like card tricks or whatever, and, acrobatic stunts, pratfalls, what have you.
Right.
But, in season 26, he becomes much more of a manipulator and a game master. So, and the subject of chess is kind of addressed at several points during McCoy's era, but predominantly in this story because chess, with chess you get the sense that a game is being played, people are being used as pawns, and so that fits in with the Doctor's manipulative character persona. So I wanted to talk about the Seventh Doctor playing chess, and I think he plays chess on several levels in this story.
I agree with you.
I kind of wanted to get your take on that, if anything kind of struck you. But go ahead.
He is a different kind of Doctor.
Right.
There is certainly you can tell that he is the same character.
Right.
But a lot more manipulative and a lot more, there's always this core that we talk about sometimes. Mm-hmm. The Doctor appears not to care about collateral damage.
Right.
And trying to get to the end of the journey and to fix things, and in his mind, I'm taking the path that's going to save the most people.
Right.
We talked a lot about that in this with the War Doctor.
Right.
So yes, it's very much him manipulating and playing, and and there is one of my lines, and so I won't talk about it now, but there is a quote that I really love when Ace calls him out.
Yeah. I might have that quote, so I might have to let you go first because I might steal it.
Okay, yeah.
So remind me.
Okay, I will.
I don't want to steal your thunder. But I know. Having seen the 11th Doctor era, the Matt Smith era.
Yes.
You kind of saw how his Doctor was very manipulative.
Yes.
So I kind of wanted your perspective on that, because with the 7th Doctor, this is kind of the foundation for that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of elements of the 7th Doctor that end up in the 11th Doctor.
And I think Matt Smith is a little more charming than Sylvester McCoy.
Right.
And sells it a little better, but now that you mention it, totally, but you don't always tell me the truth. That's why I have to ask you to trust me. That line with Amy, right, is you could directly connect that to something Sylvester McCoy may have told, this Doctor telling to Ace, right?
Right, yeah, because essentially it's like, well, you're not telling me the whole story.
Yes.
And Amy kind of gets the same way with the 11th Doctor.
Right.
That you don't tell me the whole story. There's more going on here. Why aren't you telling me?
Yes, absolutely.
So as far as the chess thing goes, it's brought up a lot in this episode. We get the Doctor. We find out that Fenric, the bad guy of the story, faced off against the Doctor eons ago or whatever. Who knows when? But he's like this ancient evil that since the dawn of time, he ends up getting in this kind of contest with the Doctor. And the Doctor beat him by challenging him to a chess problem. Which is
so cool because we go back to Matt Smith playing chess, right? In one of the episodes.
I was kind of thinking about this too as my possible, reverse the polarity.
Ooh, that would have been a good one.
But the Neil Gaiman episode.
Yes.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking about that one, but I chose a different story, which we'll talk about.
Well, package, but yes, that would have been one. Yes.
Yeah. So, Nightmare in Silver. That's what I was trying to think of.
Okay.
Yeah. In the story, there's almost kind of another chess problem where there's this stockpiled nerve gas, and like the Doctor, he's kind of facing off against Fenric, and they're kind of playing their little chess game. And when he takes over Soren's body to play that chess game after kind of leaving Judson.
Yes.
So, and we find out that chess, this whole concept of chess, this is something that the Doctor kind of got tipped off to in a previous story that we haven't reviewed, but it's the story called Silver Nemesis, where there was a chessboard, and the Doctor kind of comes across it, and he kind of recognizes it. And at that moment, we don't understand this at the time, but apparently he recognized that was Fenric, and so he kind of like played this chess move, and supposedly that game has been going on behind the scenes without our knowledge.
Very cool.
So it was kind of something that was like, you don't really get it at the time, but now it's kind of retroactively explained, like, hey, that was significant when we did this. So, and then of course you've got poor Ace, who we find out is one of Fenric's pawns, but she's also kind of the Doctor's pawn in this battle. Talks about how there's a whole bit of explanation where the Doctor he kind of tears Ace down so that she'll drop this psychic shield created by her faith in him.
Yes.
And it's a pretty powerful scene. You find out, though, during the scene that Fenric was the one who created this time storm that, like I mentioned, that brought Ace to Iceworld. And so that was when she first met the Doctor. So it's that Fenric put Ace there to meet the Doctor.
Yes.
So he was kind of behind that. So that was kind of one of his chess moves. So there's a lot of parallels going on. And I guess I've kind of talked this one to death. So
no, that's okay.
Probably move on. But
well, and I think this is
kind of get the gist that
this is one of the reasons why, in a lot of ways, I'm sorry I didn't have time to watch this a second time,
right?
Because I think this is an episode that really it improves by watching it again.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of pick up on the nuances that
yes.
the Doctor does things to get people in certain positions to take out Fenric.
Exactly. Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes he has to scramble, which he does. But then he because he's the Doctor, he overcomes and he triumphs.
Yeah.
So, all right. So another theme I wanted to talk about in the story was faith. Now, faith is something that isn't really discussed much on Doctor Who because Doctor Who is a very science-based show. And as a result, that's it kind of faith being, inherently unproven. It's the whole concept of faith is that you take it on faith. So it kind of goes against the show's general nature of, science and things happening for a reason. So with this story, though, you get several kind of issues with faith. You've got like the Reverend Wainwright,
yes,
who's this vicar who has kind of lost his faith because of World War II, which is the setting. Like he finds out that the British have been bombing and killing innocents, and so apparently that kind of tears down his faith, which is what makes him vulnerable to the Hemivores, the monsters of the show.
Yes.
So you have that. I mean, he tries to kind of recapture his faith. He does briefly. Holds the Hemivore, girls off at bay for a little while, but then he finally ends up succumbing because his faith is still so fragile. And you've got Ace's faith in the Doctor, which of course plays a big role because, again, it's keeping this psychic shielding up so that that keeps the Ancient One back. So there's that. And now, let's see. What I'm trying to think. There was one. Oh yeah, the Doctor breaking Ace's faith in him was another thing because, and kind of having to regain that faith back by the episode's end.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, I only did it to take out Fenric. I didn't really mean what I said.
Right.
So I kind of want to get your take on that.
I'm glad you asked. So first off, it has to be said, have a little faith. There's magic in the night.
Right.
I am a big believer in faith.
Right.
And this is, I think it has a lot to do with my optimistic nature, and it is a big part of my everyday life in faith in people, faith in how things are going to work out. And so I thought this was a really nice kind of subplot going in there and something interesting to explore. I always love the idea in vampire stories that it isn't the cross that makes them be afraid. It's the faith in that object.
Yeah,
it's the belief.
The faith, the belief behind it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, and sometimes they play with that, but like a Star of David would just be just as effective if you have that faith. If I had a nitpick about the episode,
right,
it's the way that he broke her down and then she so quickly forgave him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's, but I kind of had that same problem with, try to take a drink, a pop culture reference, this week's Game of Thrones episode when they're talking to Arya, and if a girl will say her name, she can sleep under a roof tonight, and a girl has no name, and I argued that she knew the answer he wanted to hear. So how much did that really mean? But then someone brought up to the fact, remember, they can sense when she's lying. So I said, okay, when you throw in that. So that's my only nitpick but I loved seeing the vicar having and I think that's one of the quotes. I did not write it down, but we're talking about how war, and there is a lot of great songs that have always written, and like Dylan wrote a great one about, God is on our side. And, this whole, and I thought the vicar losing his faith because we aren't necessarily right because of the horrible things we're doing. Right. And so I like this a lot, and I think that may have been one of the reasons I enjoyed the episode so much, is this had that depth in there, and the Doctor manipulating things, the Doctor, working on this faith to try to defeat the monster, and then the whole backstory with Ace that I kind of want to see again. That's one of the reasons I want to watch the episode again, to kind of understand a little more. Right. So, yeah, good stuff.
So, because, and I think because the World War II setting, it's great for, to explore that whole crisis of faith.
Yes.
Because, this is wartime. Horrible things happen during wartime. So a lot of people end up losing faith as a result. And sadly, Wainwright was just one of those victims. Yeah. Even though he tried to recover it, but it didn't quite work.
And it goes back to another pop culture reference. In one of the first episodes of MASH, where the Henry Blake character says, rule number 1, in war, young men die. Rule number 2 is doctors can't change rule number 1.
Right.
And so, and there is something about Doctor Who being set in that World War II timeline time frame is always interesting.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it immensely.
Totally agree. All right. So, was there anything else that you think we need to talk about?
About the
About this story.
I want to talk a little bit.
I take that back because we kind of skipped over Ace's mysterious past.
Yes, and
okay,
so I want to talk.
Let's get into that.
So I did not know she had a mysterious past.
Yeah.
Though
well, I understand.
Yeah, but when she was holding the baby and said, "Oh, that's my mother's name," I went, "How much you want to bet that's Ace's mom?"
Yep.
And that's partly because of watching Doctor Who, and
Yep.
I'm not saying that's a trope. I'm just saying, they kind of hung a lantern on it,
right.
saying, "Oh, this is important."
Yeah.
I didn't understand her fear of water, and I didn't understand why she resented her mother so much. So I did not get the relief out of that as I should have, and that's why I'm not sure if I need to watch the episode again or do I need to watch some other episodes to get the full effect. Yeah. Charles, tell me. Tell me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
As far as the... now you're mixing your metaphors here. This is Doctor Who, not Star Wars, even though it is May the 4th.
It is May the 4th.
Okay. As far as the water goes, you don't need to go back for that because that's just kind of something that was brought up in this story. Wasn't really alluded to in any other story. Ace's mother...
Kind of convenient. Oh, yeah, I'm afraid of the water.
Yeah,
what?
Exactly, yeah.
I haven't heard this.
I think there was just the whole thing, like, because of the undercurrents, and remember when those other girls went into the water, they got zapped and they became herbivores. So it kind of like maybe it was just there was maybe that concern or something that
that makes sense.
So it's just like, hey, I'm not supposed to go in there. Well, Ace is like, well, I'm not afraid anymore, so therefore I'm going to dive in.
Which was a nice moment
to prove right. that I'm not afraid. But that Ace trilogy I mentioned before, where this is kind of like part 2 of the Doctor. He's kind of taken Ace on as kind of like his almost little personal pet project. He's trying to. I think he realizes that Ace has issues, and he wants to make her confront those issues. He does that in Ghostlight, the previous story, where she kind of talks about this because this episode was reshuffled. She mentions this house that she was afraid of as a kid, and that house, that kind of haunted house or whatever, is the basis of the story for Ghostlight, where the Doctor takes her back to that very same house she's afraid of, only in a different time period, and to try to get her to confront her fear of that. Now here in this story, I got to think that the Doctor knows that Ace's grandmother and therefore Ace's mom was part of these events, that she was going to be there. It wasn't just some weird coincidence, especially with the 7th Doctor involved. I have to think he knew that.
Okay.
So I think this was kind of the Doctor trying to get Ace to confront her issues with her mother.
Okay.
And then in Survival, the story that comes after this, it's kind of Ace confronting the issues of, when you go back to your old hometown and people that you knew then, and that you hated this place as a kid, but you end up going back and you look at it with a different perspective.
Okay.
So again, I think this is the Doctor taking Ace on as a pet project, and trying to grow her.
Mm-hmm.
So now, as far as this story goes, this past, we find out that that her mom was working for the military as like one of these kind of what would you call these people? The women that work the is it like a radio? Like they're trying to decode stuff.
Okay, so I think a radio operator or code breaker.
Codebreaker, something along those lines. She's working on this project because essentially this story, or at least the setting, is kind of like a reworking of Alan Turing, who he was the guy who created the Enigma machine.
Okay.
Or I mean, he was trying to break the Enigma code. Of the Nazis. So he creates this big machine. And it was kind of the one that was in this kind of like the basis for that movie with Benedict Cumberbatch that was out recently.
Okay.
So I'm blanking on the name of the movie though.
I'm drawing a blank too, but yes.
I should have wrote this down, but it's the one that he was up for Academy Award for, so you should know. Go with that. Should be pretty easy to find out. But so Judson, I think, was kind of like supposedly the Alan Turing.
Okay.
Like a version of Alan Turing. Instead of like having issues with like trying to keep his homosexuality secret like Alan Turing did. He's got issues with his being a paraplegic and people not respecting him, and he's got this machine to decode supposedly Nazi, not to break the Nazi code. But of course the machine ends up getting used to release Fenric.
Right.
So it's but the there's this whole past with Ace. I kind of got sidetracked.
That's okay.
So I apologize. So I'm trying to think. Ace confronting this past. So she's forced to kind of confront her mother.
Yes.
And she essentially ends up being the catalyst that, and Fenric remarks on this, that she creates her own timeline.
Yeah.
By sending her mother off to be with this person, taking the baby with her, she kind of creates her own life in the future.
Yes. In a very bootstrap paradox. Yes,
exactly.
Which is so very typical Doctor Who. All right. Before we get to wrap up, I have a question.
Yes.
In the second chapter, the Doctor is asked about his family, and he answers, "I don't know," and looks very mysterious.
And solemn.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go back to because it is not because it's May 4th, but because I've always thought of this when after you watch the 3 Star Wars prequels.
Yes.
And then you go back and watch Alex Guinness play Ben Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Alec Guinness.
Alex, yes.
Alec.
Yeah, Alec. Yes, Alec. So Sir Guinness.
There you go.
Because the way he played this very vague, you almost buy that he knew this backstory, even though there was no way he knew the backstory, right?
Right.
Because it hadn't been written.
Yeah.
So, when I'm watching this,
you kind of invent it in your head.
Right.
You fill it in your head.
And so, when you're watching this,
right,
you almost are going, yeah, he has no family because of the Time Wars. Wait a minute, the Time Wars haven't happened yet. But what did happen?
I think there was something else.
Okay.
I don't think it was the Time War because that that happens farther down his timeline. But there's something else. It seems like there was something very tragic that happened with the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
He felt either his family he thought was killed, apart from Susan. So he kind of like takes Susan and they leave Gallifrey because they can't trust anybody.
Okay.
That's the kind of way I've written it in my own head.
Okay.
Is that something happened? Maybe there was some like Time Lord shenanigans because the Time Lord's always up to something.
They always are. Never trust the Time Lord.
Maybe there was a coup, to take over the High Council or whatever. and the doctor's family was killed as a result. So he's just like, screw this, screw you guys, I'm out of here.
That gives a different twist to the, because a lot of times it shows I stole a TARDIS or the TARDIS stole a Time Lord to go investigate. Yeah, and ran away. But
Right.
this could be interesting that this was actually because we have established he's never stopped running.
Right.
So okay.
See, so the question is, what is he running from?
And yes, and we don't.
And in my personal theory, this is just me speculating, is that the way I've written it in my head is that the Doctor is running from the traumatic events of watching his wife and his family die.
Okay.
And it's something he's never faced.
Okay.
So that's all he had, he felt obligated, because Susan was his granddaughter. He felt obligated to protect her.
Yeah.
So he stole that TARDIS to get the heck out of Dodge.
Okay.
Or the heck out of Gallifrey, and never looked back. He went on because he became a fugitive from his own people. So that's why I kind of see that it was something to do with the Time Lords.
Yeah.
That maybe they were the ones responsible because he's running from them.
Makes sense.
That they were either trying to kill him or something. They wanted him to do something for them.
Yeah.
So that's just the little explanation the secret origin I've cooked up in my head that I would love to write someday, but will never probably be able to do.
Okay, I like that. I like it a lot. Okay, that's all I had.
It's so tragic, and I just love that.
No, I love it too.
All right. So anything else you want to talk about the episode?
Nope. It's a good one, and I recommend it if you. It is a little hard to find.
Yes.
For our listeners, shout out to Karen. Thanks for her help.
Well, if you don't want to buy the DVD, because you could find the DVD on Amazon.
Okay, but it didn't look very cheap.
Oh, well, it's because it's out of print.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
So, but this was a great one. It's worth finding.
Yes.
It definitely is. Good. Okay.
Yeah, you can track it down, but if you know somebody or you know a good streaming site.
Yes, absolutely.
Not that we encourage such things.
No, we don't.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, sing them all.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So let's talk about favorite lines. So before I steal your line.
I just love this line. Ace says, "You know what's going on. You always know. You just can't be bothered to tell anyone. Right. It's like it's some kind of game, and only you know the rules."
Right. Only she says it a lot more angrily.
Yes. And if there was a line describing the Doctor's personality,
right,
this may be the most accurate line of all 12 versions of the Doctor. Do you agree?
Well, it applies to all of them, really.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a very all-encompassing line, and it does describe the Doctor pretty much to a T.
Yes.
Because he's usually the guy who knows what's going on. He's not telling anybody.
Right.
For whatever reason. Yeah. His own needs or to protect others or what have you.
Yes.
But he seems to be the one that pretty much knows how that chessboard is set up.
Absolutely.
And how to play it.
I agree.
Or the Doctor's playing a different game and isn't telling anybody else.
Absolutely.
Yep. So okay, that was one of them that I actually wrote down. So I'm glad you got to do it. Okay, so I have another line.
Okay.
It's the Doctor when he's trying to explain what the deal is with Fenric, what's going on to Ace, and he says, "The dawn of time, the beginning of all beginnings, two forces, only good and evil, then chaos. Time is born, matter, space. The universe cries out like a newborn. The forces shatter as the universe explodes outwards. Only echoes remain, yet somehow the evil force survives, an intelligence of pure evil."
Nice. Very good.
I thought it was cool.
Yes. Any others?
Yeah, I have one more line, and this is from Ace because I just loved the delivery of this line.
Okay.
it's kind of like halfway through the episode where she's kind of feeling like she did something that she felt really good about. Like she got a little minor victory for herself, and she goes, and the halftime score: Perryville 600 million, rest of the universe nil.
That is good. And I had
referring to her childhood home, Perryville.
Toward the end of the episode, in fact, it's one of the last lines.
Yeah.
The doctor says to her, "Love and hate, frightening feelings, especially when they are trapped, struggling beneath the surface." And I thought that was a pretty good line, too, because love and hate can be so intertwined together, and especially if you're trying to keep them covered. So I thought that was really good.
There's a thin line between love and hate.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. So what's your rating for this story?
I give this 8 out of 10 cursed vases.
Vases. You can pronounce it either way.
Yes, I know.
I don't care.
And how about you, Charles?
I give this one 8.5 out of 10 pawns in a chessboard.
Ooh, very nice.
Because I love the whole chessboard.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
All right.
All right. You mentioned that you were tempted to do Nightmare in Silver.
Yep, but I didn't choose that one.
Okay,
so for my reverse the polarity segment, I'm going to go back to 2011 to The Wedding of River's Song, which is the 13th episode from Series 6. It was also an 11th Doctor story, which kind of ties in with what we were talking about with the 7th Doctor and the 11th Doctor being so manipulative. Written by Moffat, of course. So in this episode, the Doctor is searching space and time for any information regarding the silence. So the 11th Doctor ends up challenging this alien named Gantok to a game of live chess, if you recall. And that's, of course, is a legal game that has electricity running through the pieces that increases with each move. So, and then accepting his earlier fate at Lake Silencio at the beginning of Series 6, the Doctor arranges for invitations to be delivered to Amy, Rory, and River. He confronts the impossible astronaut rising from the lake, revealing River trapped inside the suit by the silence. And so, again, you've got the Doctor manipulating events.
Yes.
As in this story, in the Curse of Fenric. River ends up causing temporal events to become combined and stuck, however, as the Doctor realizes he needs to die to prevent time from disintegrating. Yeah. So with only one way to pacify River, because it's all about River, the Doctor marries her and whispers his true name into her ear. So, of course, you've got that little bit of mystery.
Yes.
A little bit of secrets. Time ends up moving again as River shoots the Doctor 3 times to prevent his regeneration. Now, it turns out, however, that the Doctor asked for help from this crew of the Tesselecta, which is this device that can change shape and form, disguising itself as him, while he and the TARDIS were safely inside it, which allows the Doctor to technically be at Lake Silencio, so he could be killed, in air quotes. Now, the universe believes the Doctor to be dead, while River is imprisoned for the rest of her life for a false murder. So again, the Doctor kind of sets up River,
yes,
to get himself out of a jam.
She spends her days in prison, but her
nights
night
with him. Yes.
Yes, we will talk elsewhere. Great episode, wonderful reveal.
You got the playing chess.
Yes, absolutely, very cool,
in
very nice. But Charles, we don't just have classic Who to talk about, do we?
No, we're going to talk about some new Who. So now it's been a while since we've been out because we've gone to this bi-weekly thing because somebody's got a lot of Set Lusting Bruce to record.
Absolutely.
So because of that, there was a big news story that came out since our last episode. And that, of course, is the casting of Pearl Mackie as new companion Bill. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the casting news. And there's like a 2-minute little teaser video kind of showing Bill interacting with the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, as he kind of explains Daleks to her to kind of get her up to speed on that. And so I'm kind of wondering, I'm guessing you've seen that video by now, right?
Yes.
So what's your thoughts what's your initial thoughts on Bill before we really know anything about her?
I am very excited about her.
Okay.
Now, Linda would say you are going to be excited for any new companion, and she would be correct. But there's, she seemed to have a little bit of sass.
Right.
She very different than Clara, both in appearance and style. She was wearing a print shirt, which is not planned.
Yeah. Because this was shot way before. So
yes.
What eerie timing for
yes,
the print shirt.
It was. I loved her questions of the Doctor, the banter back and forth. And him going, I never stop to ask because I'm too busy running. And, and her point of, well, wouldn't just be, kill you would be faster, or more easily. She seems to be, as much as there were people that you and I talked about that we would have loved to be in companions that had been on the show before, I give her a welcome to Doctor Who and tell her that I hope she enjoys her time in the TARDIS. This seems like it's going to be great.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm hoping Bill is the bit of breath of fresh air that after Clara, because Clara got such a bad rap from a lot of fans, unfairly in my opinion.
I agree.
And so I'm hoping that they're kinder to Bill in this regard. I kind of see Bill, my first impressions of her is she's very Ace-like a little bit. I don't know, maybe because of the way she's dressed. I'm kind of wondering if she's actually like a character from the 1980s.
Okay.
Because the Doctor talks about, he made this mention in the 2-minute video that we're going to go back to the future to 2017. So that kind of hinted to me that she was from the past before 2017, although it could just be that we're in 2016.
But
so I don't want to just totally say yes, she's from the 80s, but
with the print shirt,
the print shirt is that
really helps, right?
It does help. I mean, the hairstyle, the clothes, tend to hint at a character from the past. So we'll see if that happens, but I'm hoping she's from the 80s. I think that would be great.
I think that would be very cool.
It'd be great to have a non-contemporary companion again.
Absolutely, and
we haven't had many of those.
And a little bit of Donna, the good part, kind of being sarcastic and doing
questioning.
Yes, so that's kind of a good thing, and so I'm excited for her. I also
still a long way to 2017.
Yes, it is.
So we got a long way to find out more about Bill.
By the way, I reached out.
Is Bill short for like Wilhelmina or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder.
I reached out to one of the cast members of Class.
Yeah.
And through Twitter, and he said that he's got to work through the studio, but he would love to join us on the podcast sometime.
Yes. I saw that email or that instant message exchange. And, so, that would be great if we can make that happen.
That would be very nice.
So, fingers crossed.
Absolutely.
That would be great. So, next time on Next Stop Everywhere, I'm going to take us back to 1985, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
For the Colin Baker story, The Two Doctors.
So that would be good. I have, I like Colin Baker a great deal, and the more I've watched of him, this will be good. So yes, I'm very excited about it.
I mean, it's great because you get not only do you get Colin Baker interacting with Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor.
Okay.
And sadly, his final story is the second Doctor. But you also get the return of a companion, Jamie McCrimmon.
Ooh, nice.
So you get that thing you kind of always wanted to see, a returning companion after quite some time.
Yay!
Meeting up with Perry. So yeah, so I'm kind of wanting to get your thoughts on that.
Okay.
So I hope that's a good idea for you.
That sounds great.
Now I will warn you though, it's 3 45-minute episodes long.
Okay. All right.
It was during this one season where they did 45-minute episodes as opposed to the traditional 23 minutes. So
Okay.
it's essentially 6 23-minute episodes.
Okay.
Compared to the typical 4, like we did with Curse of Fenric.
Okay.
So and it is on iTunes. I checked.
Okay. Thank you.
To make sure. If you let me know if you have trouble finding it, but it's on iTunes.
Okay. Very nice.
So we'll do that. Jesse, is there? Let's if you got anything to plug, like Set Listing Bruce, let's hear it.
Yes. Actually, this is coming out shortly, maybe a little bit after this episode is sent out on iTunes and Stitcher and all our other places.
Yep.
The 50th episode of Set Listing Bruce will come out, so I'm really proud of that.
How did you get to 50 so quickly?
So, well, God, what is the Fandom Zone is
58. 50.
Yeah.
The Phantom Zone actually passed Next Stop Everywhere.
Yes.
This week
Uh-huh.
by hitting 58 before we hit 58. We're
Yeah.
already Phantom Zone's posted 58 now.
Yeah.
Because we've been slacking off in Next Stop Everywhere.
Yeah, so because I'm doing 2 episodes of Set Listing Bruce a week, and I'm doing Next Stop Everywhere every other week. So, so that's doing that, and so you can find me, you can find that at Set Listing Bruce on Twitter, and at Southgate Media page. Please check that out. I'm still working on Charles to come on and talk about his musical heroes.
Well, remember, I do have that Sting and Peter Gabriel concert coming up next
Yes,
month.
we may have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. And I am on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. And by the way,
Right.
talking, Dad Rock, the USA podcast, just released today, as we're recording this, a short interview with me when they came through the DFW area. I met them for breakfast, and we talked for a few minutes. And so on the USA Today feed, there is actually a discussion with myself and a little bit of Bruce Springsteen.
Very cool.
Yeah. And
so
Charles?
we'll have to check that out.
Yes, and Charles, how about you?
So me, of course, I'm at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram, Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus. Shout out to Karen. My blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about Doctor Who and Next Stop Everywhere and the new things like Pearl Mackie is the new companion and all kinds of stuff. And Facebook, of course. And then of course there's my podcast that I do with Karen, friend of the show, Karen, the Phantom Zone podcast, where I talk about all these wonderful comic book shows on television, one of which is Arrow, which is just now on. So
yes.
So we'll wrap this up so I can
yes,
get up
we
there
do.
and watch
Absolutely.
Arrow. But so for all of us here at Next Stop Everywhere, I hope you guys had fun. We certainly did, and thank you again for supporting the show. And please check us out on Facebook and also on iTunes and now Google Play Music, because we're on Google Play Music. Hopefully some of you out there found us there.
Yes, and please go to iTunes and Google Play, rate and review us. It helps people find us. Charles, thank you. I'm going to end this with do you know any nice people? You know, ordinary people, not power-crazed nutters trying to take over the galaxy.
Yep. Love that.
Our girl Ace.
Yep.
So, thanks, everyone.
Bye.